Football guys versus analytics has to be the dumbest war going on in sports. It's a war between football coaches who are hired to coach the team and make critical in-game decisions at a moment's notice, and the analytics department, which exists solely to assist the coach by giving them more information about the decision they are about to make. Also, the fact that these two sides are presented as conflicting outlooks by the media is also a part of the problem and is a narrative that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, analytics are meant to enhance and help a good football coach make more informed and efficient decisions. And that is it. That is their purpose in football. But often it is portrayed as if analytics are a end-all, be-all solution meant to phase out the human element of football completely. The problem with this narrative is that it is making you take a side between two things that don't oppose each other. See, the analytics and football guy argument is usually framed as two opposing viewpoints when they aren't. Analytics is not and never is implemented as a replacement for coaching, but as a way to assist good coaching. Analytics cannot coach a player, cannot create a game plan, or manage a locker room, and it's not meant to, nor does it pretend to. What it can tell you is who on your roster should get a day off to avoid injury, what decisions are more likely to be successful in what scenarios, what plays are most successful in a given situation, and when it is used in the proper and intended context, it generally works. The Patriots, the Ravens, and the Jaguars have all had success using analytics. See, analytics is information. How that information is received, well, that's where egos get involved. If the extreme pro-analytics stance is that it should control everything instead of assist, that would be like saying everybody's legs should be replaced with robotic limbs because theoretically they are superior. And on the other side of the spectrum, if the anti-analytics stance is that they have no part in the game, and that football, for whatever reason, is the only sport immune to analytics when they have helped other sports, then that'd be like breaking your legs and refusing to get a cast and crutches because you want to work it out naturally. It'd be dumb. That'd be dumb. Analytics are the crutch. They exist to help and enhance what is happening organically. Now, let me be clear here. The reason for the Browns' struggle between these two extremes isn't because of the media. It isn't because inside the building they don't have the proper understanding of analytics. It's because Dee Haslam doesn't know what he's doing sometimes. And this is a prime example of a structure that was put together that was meant to fail, but I can see where it looked good on paper because you have John Dorsey, a proven successful GM who would be identified as a football guy. And then on the other hand, you have John D. Podesta, a proven and successful organization builder who is not only a good analytics guy, he is the analytics guy. Anybody that you respect in analytics has a very, very high opinion of John D. Podesta. He is the guy in that field. See, the Haslam's understanding of analytics is not the problem. For most quotes, they think it's a tremendous tool to enhance decision-making like they are intended to. So I don't think they have a misconception of how powerful analytics can be. The Browns thought that they had the best analytics guy already in their building. So instead of hiring somebody that analytics guy would welcome, they decided, hey, let's hire the best football guy that we can get so that our analytics guy can enhance that guy's decision-making and, you get the best of both worlds in that way. If you have the best analytics guy, theoretically, he should be able to enhance the decision-making of a good football guy. But they didn't account for ego on both sides. And more importantly, they didn't set up the structure in a way that was going to allow for there to be a healthy amount of ego in this situation. See, John Dorsey had done his job well for many years and was not open to having analytics play a strong role in his decision making. And to be fair to John Dorsey, decision making is kind of the thing that he was hired to do. And John Dee Podesta, on the other hand, had done his job well for many years and was not happy with the lack of input that he had in the organization, which, to be fair to John Dee Podesta, was an organization that he was hired to align correctly. See, if the relationship was clearly that Dorsey was going to pick the players and Dee Podesta was going to align the organization, obviously you have a problem at the inception of that idea, because John Dee Podesta would never pick Dorsey to align the organization with, and John Dorsey would never pick John Dee Podesta as somebody he would take any input from. So from the start, this thing was ruined. See, the Haslams hired two people to do similar jobs, and they were shocked when those people didn't get along. Hiring Dee Podesta or Dorsey individually wasn't the mistake. The mistake was to hire them both to do the same job, and to make things worse, the Haslams were really vague about the structure. This led to the two constantly stepping on each other's toes, which of course led to polarization between the two parts of the building, which turned analytics from being a tool to help football operations to a threat to football operations, which came to a head during the 2018 coaching search. Both Dee Podesta and Dorsey had a reason to believe that they should have significant input into the coaching hire, because both of them, when they were hired, were kind of hired to do those kind of things. Dorsey had his eyes on Freddie Kitchens, an up-and-comer at the time who had a great relationship with Baker Mayfield, which Dorsey coveted. And traditional football guys tend to favor coaches who can build relationships. Ask any old school football kind of guy. They value coaches who can build those relationships. And to them, they feel like analytics can't quantify that kind of thing. And again, Freddie was very strong at that area when they hired him. Now, Dee Podesta, like Kevin Stefanski, a young up-and-comer with an Ivy League degree, in addition to his football resume, who already used analytics to assist him as an offensive coordinator in Minnesota. Now, more than likely, and I'm speculating here, Dorsey did not seriously consider Stefanski last year because the analytics department suggested him. And while that is not a good move for John Dorsey to ignore a candidate, put yourself in John Dorsey's shoes. You have already been aligned by the owner to perceive the John Dee Podesta and the whole analytics department as a threat to your job security. So why would you take their suggestion when the Browns are literally hiring you to make decisions? It was a dysfunctional situation from the start that resulted in a dysfunctional decision, which turned out to be Freddie Kitchens. And as the tensions rolled on, as the losses came in, and as Kitchens looked worse and worse, the analytics department seemed like more and more of a threat, which led more than likely to the whole department being ignored, which, if you look at the details in the season, definitely looks like it's the case. Freddie Kitchens intentionally ran the toughest training camp possible, which I don't know a lot of analytics departments that would recommend that. He also had tough in-week practices, again, something analytics departments don't recommend, and that led to non-game day injuries coming out by the boatload this season. Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward, Demarius Randall, Rashard Higgins, all guys who popped up injured in the middle of the week. Again, these are things that analytics departments have been proven at being very good at avoiding. Since the widespread implementation of them, these kind of injuries, these kind of situations have gone down dramatically. Even with Hugh Jackson under the Browns, these situations didn't pop up as much as they did this year with Freddie Kitchens, once it looks like they abandoned any type of input from the analytics department. Also, you have to look at the fact that somebody like David Njoku, who was coveted by Sachi Brown, the key analytics guy, was benched and even put as inactive after his return from IR, which is head scratching because the Browns weren't really healthy at tight end at the time. They were down to Stephen Carlson taking snaps for the team. So why not throw David Njoku out there if you're throwing out Stephen Carlson? Unless there's an agenda behind it, which the benching and just disappearance of David Njoku would strongly suggest. And I think the biggest clue to how much the analytics department was ignored during the 2019 season, and I think the biggest flame that burnt down the building, was Freddie Kitchens' terrible game management and decision making. Again, analytics departments exist specifically to aid in these areas. Any team with the analytics department has a guy on game day with a headset on in a booth with a binder full of scenarios and probabilities for this exact reason. It seems as if Freddie Kitchens ignored these suggestions on a regular basis, not because he made bad decisions, but he made decisions that analytics department or any team with the analytics department that is listened to just simply would not recommend making. So looking at the situation from both sides here, if you're John Dorsey, you have somebody who was hired before you and who has some of the same job responsibilities you have as far as organization building goes. The ownership has also been so vague about the structure, so naturally you are in a power struggle, but you're in a power struggle with a department of the organization that exists to assist you in decision making. Now, if you're John Dee Podesta, you are hired to give the organization direction and structure, but you have had no input on who the GM is and who the head coach is, which are two huge parts of the structure that you were hired to create. You have watched the franchise go against your recommendation and hire Hugh Jackson, who then became statistically the worst head coach of the modern era. You are also watching Dorsey and Kitchens ignore your entire department, and to put the cherry on top, they're making bad decisions. Decisions you had people specifically advise them not to make. Let me say this, and let me say this clear. This was never going to be a workable situation. And the Haslams deserve all the blame for not having the foresight to see that having these two in similar positions would harm the organization. This could have been avoided in one way or the other if the roles and responsibilities of Dee Podesta and Dorsey were clearly defined and had no overlap. But that's not what the Browns did. The Browns hired two people who had job descriptions that had a lot of overlap. And this led to Dorsey and Dee Podesta battling each other out rather than using their powers to assist each other, which obviously hurt the team. Now, the one thing I'll give the Haslams credit for this offseason is that they decided to cut their losses as far as public perception of them goes and allowed John Dee Podesta to do the job they actually hired him to do, which is aligned to organization. Now, that doesn't mean that this is going to work, but it does mean that things should be more structurally sound. Dee Podesta is the main voice being heard when it comes to organizational decisions. Now, whoever the GM is and Kevin Stefanski don't have to see the analytics department as some threat to their job security, thus ignoring the entire department. John Dorsey should not have been fired, but he also shouldn't have been hired if the Browns intended on keeping Dee Podesta long term, especially if the job description for Dee Podesta was never going to change. Now, let me make things clear. I don't think John Dorsey was some dinosaur who was against the entire concept of analytics. I don't think he's that incompetent. But I think he was put in a position where he had to be against analytics because analytics represented the person who was a threat to his job, which is John Dee Podesta. If the Browns would have kept their analytics department but got rid of Dee Podesta and his job title, things would have probably worked out. But the Browns independently hired two separate people to create an organizational structure, which led to two different guys trying to build two completely different structures. They arranged a marriage between Dee Podesta and Dorsey that nobody on both sides was interested in. And at least this time, they're done arranging marriages for at least one season. But that's my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts? Do you think the analytics versus football guy war is kind of a made up thing or is definitely misconstrued by how it's covered? Or do you think that it is a real battle between guys, which I don't think it is? Let me know in the comment section down below, but hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.